Oh, I'm on. We are live. We are live for this virtual Six Nations event. We're brought to you by SO.BEER. Get it? Sober? A beer with benefits. It is a lovely drop. I'm drinking it now. I was drinking it quite rapidly. And then I realised that's absolutely fine because it's non-alcoholic. It boosts my immune system. And it is absolutely lovely. So, SO.BEER, and for everyone watching this, I'm drinking that. And I will be sober by the end of the Six Nations. And if you're Scottish, I don't know whether that is a good thing, but we are beating Italy comfortably. But welcome everyone to this Six Nations virtual event. This is the life that we find ourselves in at the minute, and it's fine. I'm Jim Hamilton. I'm the host of this event, and we're joined by a former Irish great, David Wallace, and another person called Tom Shanklin as well, who used to play a bit of rugby. But I'm Jim Hamilton. I'm going to be the English contingent, although I played for Scotland 63 times. I don't know how. You ask yourself, and if you saw me, you won't know how either. But yeah, my Uncle David once said I am one of the greatest Scots who have ever done it. That was after 3 or 4 whiskies, after another 3 or 4 whiskies. So we've got this virtual event. Big thank you to SO.BEER. We've got a couple of rugby legends and Tom Shanklin that will be joining us. There is a chat function where you can put your questions in. They will be filtered through an organic filter, and they will be sent to your host, which is me. Well, I will then put them through. So put your questions in via Facebook, on the YouTube comments. If they're good, I will read them out. If they're funny, I will read them out. But we're here to talk about what should have been the final week of the Six Nations. And I'm going to introduce you, and we'll bring them up to the 2 guests, the 2 stars of the show, really. I'm not. We've got David Wallace, former Ireland great. He's actually one of the guys I looked up to as a player. 72 caps for Ireland. 1 Six Nations, 1 Grand Slam, and a 2-time British and Irish line. I'm actually quite embarrassed that I will be sitting on this panel with David. David, welcome. How are you, mate?
Hey, Jim. Good to see you. Good to see you. Last time we met, I think it was up in Ravenhill, where you put me through my my paces and the fitness test. So this is a much more pleasurable environment, I think.
Yes, we can talk a little bit about that, David. You're looking very well. Look at the size of your traps and your arms at the minute. I am trying to keep a little bit side on, just the front profile isn't great. But I'll keep you there, David, because we're going to bring in the other guy who used to play a bit of rugby, and he's told me that I need to go through his bio. And he said he got 70 caps for Wales, which I think he did. He said it should have been 100, but he also won 2 Grand Slams, and he said it should have been 4. And he is actually a good lad. He is a good lad. He's Welsh, and he's going to give a little bit of insight into the English team as well. How Wales are on for a Grand Slam, I do not know. But Tom Shanklin, as we bring you into this live virtual area, legend. How are you?
I too work out. All right, just like Wally.
Wally, how old are you now? Do you mind me asking? I don't want to be rude.
Too old, man. 44 now. 44.
Look at the shape on you. Are you into your training?
I'm lucky. I have a gym here in the office. I have a very good boss, so it kind of helps. But no, definitely a COVID code on at the moment. So put my back out in December as well too. So it hasn't been good for a couple of months, to be honest.
Are you into Botox, Wally? Then, if you're not into
Love it.
Yeah.
Reaching 2000 Shanks.
Very good.
We'll come straight to Shanks, Wally. We'll come to the game of the weekend, but I do want to ask Shanks. Thanks for coming on. Austin Healy was meant to be here, but he pulled out last minute. I don't know. Maybe he got paid to do a gig or something like that, and he told me he was exclusive. He couldn't be live on YouTube or Facebook. So Shanks, you've stepped up to anyway, mate. You're a legend. You're a Welsh legend. We can talk a bit about Wales. How the hell are they on for a Grand Slam today? How are they going to France? And if they beat France, which they won't in Paris, how are they on for a Grand Slam? Just give us a quick few lines on that.
Incredible, mate. You know, you were said at the start of the tournament, people laughing at you. But just shows you it's a short tournament, a little bit of momentum, a little bit of confidence, a little bit of luck, or should I say a huge bit of luck. But just shows, mate, how important discipline is. Taking opportunities, they scored 17 tries. The scrum's solid, the line-out's solid, the defence is good. So all of a sudden, you know, we're going for a Grand Slam. And look, the first 2 games, you know, playing against 14 men, that obviously helped. But you still got to be disciplined to keep 50 men on the field to take advantage of that. But the turning point was the England game, I think, to get a bonus point win against England, against 15 men. And I know one of the tries given we look back, was actually a knock-on. But sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't. We're lucky that it went our way. Then we had Italy, and now it's France. I think we're hammering, mate. I think we'll put 50 on France, no problem.
My goodness me, we'll come out.
They go right off Wales anyway, don't they? Kind of, and then they kind of seem to come together and just have an X factor when they put on that red jersey.
Yeah, we like being rubbish for a couple of years, Wally, and then we just soar straight up. It's all or nothing with us, but at least you get the Grand Slams.
Wally, just talk to me a little bit about Ireland, but I want to go back first to talk about a little bit about your career. I used to love watching you play. You're very similar to me, powerful, good with the ball in hand, durable, and arguably, my Uncle David said I should have been a two-time British and Irish Lion. But what I love about the Irish and what I loved playing against the Irish was how connected all the fans were with the players. I mean, I think I'm right in saying it's the #1 sport in Ireland. I know you've got the one that you hit around with sticks and stuff like that as well. But
actually, we're well down. We're well down the pecking order. Well, certainly it wasn't when I was growing up. It was fourth at best. So you Gaelic football, hurling, as you mentioned there. Soccer would have been, the Italian 90, kind of that era. Soccer would have been right up there. So rugby was really, really, I suppose, not uncommon, but in places like Limerick, where I moved to when I was about 12, it was just massive, and it is just massive. So it's like a religion here. And it's kind of everyone you meet in the street, the first topic of conversation is rugby, which is pretty unique in Ireland, I think. So yeah, I was lucky to move here when I was about 12, and went back to college in Cork, and Cork is massive for Gaelic football and hurling, and obviously Roy Keane coming from there as well too. So rugby is well down the pecking order, even in Cork, and the biggest county in Munster. But so I moved straight back to Limerick, and it's brilliant because it just you live, eat, and breathe it. After every game you played, you're conscious of facing, going out your front door and facing the first person you meet on the street. And, the topic is going to be rugby, and, you feel like you're letting them down. So it's a massive part of, I think, Munster's success, certainly in the early years, yeah. Yeah,
so you look at it as well. I think you've got another couple of countries that are probably rivaled with that in terms of the rugby and the association with the people and the communities. One is Wales, the other one's obviously New Zealand, and we're talking about Ireland. So when you look back on your career, Wally, and I went through and we had not a joke, it was serious what I said, 72 caps for Ireland, Six Nations Grand Slam, double British and Irish Lion, and then everything that you did in the club jersey as well. Like, have you got any highlights when you look back at your career? Do you look back much, or do you just focus on the here and now, making sure your biceps are on form and the traps are still above the shoulder?
I'm going to turn my camera off here. Look, there was I suppose I was lucky to be in a period with Munster that we kind of came together, because we were coming from nowhere. We were all club players in the early days, which kind of were thrown together into a representative team for a couple of matches against Leinster, Connacht, and Ulster in my day, and then obviously the European Cup was building. But I think with Ireland as well, the likes of Munster and Leinster kind of reaching their peaks around the same time, 2009. Maybe Munster just coming off it, but look, I suppose making the Lions was a good one, because both my brothers had played for the Lions, and I suppose it was a dream goal for me. When I wrote it down as a dream goal, I wasn't even playing for Munster at the time; it was kind of subbing. So I was lucky enough that things happened. Maybe I just got myself in a bit of shape at the right time and was in the right place at the right time. But I was actually, when I got called up, we were heading over to Spala. I don't know if any lads have been over to Spala in Poland, and it's this cryotherapy place in the middle of a forest, and there's nothing for it feels like hundreds of miles. So you're literally stuck in the middle of a forest for 3.5 weeks. I think it was the first trip. So we had met up in Dublin. We got a 4 or 5 o'clock flight over to Copenhagen en route to Poland, and when we stopped off in Copenhagen, kind of turned on our phones or whatever in transit. And I got a call from Ronan O'Gara on the other line. He was down with the Lions at the time. So I answered the phone in the duty free, and I got, "Hey, Wally, how's it going?" And I said, "It's good, yeah. What the hell are you doing ringing me from Australia?" He remember he just had a bit of an incident with Duncan McRae as well too. So I was kind of shocked to hear from him. And he said, "Are you coming out here?" And I was like, "What? So you coming out here?" I was speaking to a cameraman, and he said, "You're coming out." I was like, Raj, I've heard nothing. I'd say, like, you've heard it from a cameraman. It's and he said, all right, I'll chat to you. He hung up on me. And I was just left in the middle of duty free going, what the fuck was that about? Sorry, excuse my French. But Peter Stringer was also in the duty free, so he came over kind of, it's like a meerkat looking around for trouble. So he saw my reaction, and before I knew it, he had told everyone that I was going out, and I was up in the King's chair, and I was like, lads, I'm not going out. It was some cameraman, some random comment. But thankfully, fortunately, I got another call after that from the Lions guys, and yeah, I headed out there. But yeah, it was brilliant, and just to kind of supposed to be part of that with my brothers. And the other highlight of that was I got to see Brian O'Driscoll thumping Austin Healy as well in the team room. they threw on.
What happened while we're on the Lions tour stories, and Shanks, will come to you. You know, another British and Irish Lion great after this. But yeah, talk to us a little bit about Austin and Brian O'Driscoll. That
was brilliant, because as I mentioned, like, Raj had been through a tough week, you know, with the Duncan McRae incident, and you know, his eye was out to here, and Austin was being a bit chirpy with them and giving him a bit of stick as he does. And in the team room there was a big box of you know, equipment and whatever, but there was boxing gloves there. So Austin threw on the boxing gloves and was up to Raj, you know, pretending he was you know, a boxer or whatever. And so Dricko kind of said, right, I've had enough of this. So I said, right, Austin, come on, let's throw on the gloves. So yeah, so we all gathered around and said, this is going to be epic. And I actually fancied Austin. I said, you know, I'd seen him in the gym, you know, he's an all-rounder, he's really into his fitness and everything, but it was ridiculous. Dricko was like something from Keanu, like from The Matrix, or from Snatch, you know, Brad Pitt in Snatch. Austin would throw a punch and he'd be doubled back over and back and come back. It was like he was a professional boxer, and he destroyed Austin. So it was definitely a highlight of the tour.
That's why he's not come on, Austin. He knows the Irish contingent are strong. Shanks, while we're on the Lions chat, we can probably accelerate this conversation as well, because there's talk around the tour. They had a committee meeting last night. Look at me, I'm in the know. I kind of the team manager for the Lions actually lives down the road from me, so he's given me a bit of intel. So for the millions of you watching on YouTube, they're talking about having it in South Africa. But Shanks, we'll come on to that. Just talk to me about your romance and your relationship with the Lions. Is it as glorious as it all looks from the outside looking in? I should have been in, but looking in.
You should have been a cameraman with inside knowledge like that about the Lions.
Captain.
I got selected in 2005, and it was different in 2009 after. You heard on Sky Sports News, like, no player finds out previously. We were watching Sky Sports News just waiting for your name like that to be called out. It was one of the most nervous times I've ever had. That, and obviously the penalty shootout against Leicester in the semi-final of the Heineken Cup. That was horrific. All he had to do was kick the ball in between the posts from the 22. But my heart was going more than anything I've ever done before. And it was like that when you're waiting for your name to be called out from the Lions. But in 2005, we found out on the radio. We were training at the Cardiff Blues. We found out on the radio, Dan Barr, who was strength and conditioning coach, just came over with it was three of us from the Cardiff Blues. They came over with 3 big cigars, lit them up, and we tried to smoke them, but it didn't go down very well. Coughed our way through it. Something you probably wouldn't do nowadays. But look, the Lions was definitely the pinnacle for me. You know, being able to put the shirt on. Be it I didn't play in a test, I was injured. Otherwise, probably I might have been captain or vice captain. But to actually get selected and to be able to be part of that, it just doesn't get any better. And for me, the 97 Lions tour, I don't know, how old are you, Wally? Did you go on that one as well?
No, my brother called it.
I know, that was your brother.
Yeah. He always lords it over me as well too.
That was the one that captivated everyone, I think, with that tour. You know, you look back and it's still like the best rugby DVD ever. Rugby just turned professional. It was still a massive social element to it as well. And you watch that as a kid, I think I was 16 or 17, and that was like a moment where I watched that and thought, oh, look, do you know what? Rugby's for me. I really want to make it as a professional. I want to be part of that. I want to enjoy it like they did. So just to be selected, mate, you know, it was brilliant. Again, at 2009, I'm sure Wally and I would have been like BFFs had I made that tour. But injured myself a week before we got onto the plane. And I didn't even get the kit. It was all branded up. I didn't even get it. So the lows of rugby, but obviously, look back, you wouldn't change anything. What about you, Jim? Were you in contention at all? Were you on standby for any Lions?
Well, I got a letter in 2009, and in 2013, Graham
framed it
Round.
on the wall.
Yeah, well, I've got it just in the drawer here. Do you want me to show you? So Graham Roundtree, Wally, you remember this game, right? Okay, Scotland played Ireland in 2013. It was a classic. It was
they beat us.
9-6, 2013. And basically, I'm in the front of the line out. I'm meant to be in the middle of the line out against Paul O'Connell, but I keep shifting around. Like, I keep going forward, I keep going back, and I'm at the front of the line out screaming, get the ball in, get the ball in, get the ball in. And then I kind of just jumped really high to block Rory Best's vision. I've closed the gap because it was old school back then. The pitch was shocking. And I ruined about 6 of Ireland's 8 lineouts that day. I was in Paulie's head and Rory Best's head. Gats is in the crowd with the other 80,000 people. How nice was that when there were crowds in stadiums? And I've got man of the match after the game, got the medal. I'm obviously tired. We've gone out because we went out after a win, lose or draw. And I've convinced myself, all my mates to say, mate, you're going on the Lions tour to get man of the match against Ireland. Graham Roundtree rings me on the way to a charity gig and says, you're going. Mate, you're going. Like, just pack your bag. The likelihood is you're going to be midweek, potentially captain. I asked him that. He kind of said maybe. And I was like, I'm not bothered about the tests. I am bothered about going. I'll go midweek. I'll hold a bag. Just take me. So off the back of that, he said, but don't tell anyone because it's obviously confidential. You're not meant to know. But I knew Graham Roundtree from my days at Leicester. Straight on the blower to the lads at home from Coventry, which is just north of the Hebrides. I'm on the phone to the lads. I'm like, lads, book your flights across. We're going. We're going on this Lions tour. There's a game in Hong Kong against the Barbarians. Stop off there because that'll be epic as well. And then onward we go to Australia. So all my mates have booked. My family have booked their flights to go as well. And as the season kind of fizzled out, Paulie had been injured. He had a back injury for quite a while. Came back in for the semi-final of the European Cup. Stole 1 line out, not 6. Stole 1 line out. Stuart Barnes gives him man of the match. Paulie was meant to be injured all summer, but he's rushed back. Next thing, Roundtree rings me and said, mate, did you see Paulie at the weekend? I said, well, I saw him take 1 line out, yeah. And he's like, yeah, they've decided to go with Paul O'Connell. I was like, I was competing with Paul O'Connell to be a Lion. I said, I didn't stand a chance, did I? And that was...
Do you know, talking about lineouts, we've once played England in 2004, and Dwayne Peel was our scrum half, and we thought we hadn't beaten England for such a long time, since 1999, I think. And we thought we'd take it by surprise, so we'd throw Dwayne Peel, the shortest player up, at the front of the lineout to compete against Martin Johnson. So the first lineout happens, we throw Dwayne Peel up the top. Martin Johnson just comes across like that, elbow straight into Peely's eye, and he's down for like 5 minutes getting treatment. Then England go on to score, and then we're having a huddle under the post about, how we can come back for this, what we're going to do. And we just hear this little faint voice in the background, and it's Peely with this massive voice saying, guys, don't make me jump again. it was the worst thing ever. Like, he was going to stand a chance against one of the all-time greats. Yeah, no. We went on to lose that game. But
no doubt. When rugby was rugby.
Yeah.
We'll keep the questions coming in. We've had about 100,000, but I couldn't read them out. So if you have got questions, keep filtering your questions through. I can answer them. The lads can answer them. But Wally, while we're on the Lions tour, we don't want to labour it, but there could be people watching this who are thinking it's on their bucket list to go to South Africa. There's talk of it being in the UK and the game in Ireland. We don't even know how it looks. From what I'm hearing is they're trying to do everything to get the game. The game's over in South Africa. It's been planned to go there logistically. There's whispers of maybe fans in the Cape Town games. From a player who has played on the tours, what are you thinking around probably what's best for all involved? What would you like to see?
Oh, look, ideally, you'd like to see it, originally as planned. But, that's very much in the lap of the gods in some ways. And obviously safety is paramount. So I think regardless of where it's played, I think, if it goes ahead, I think that's the main thing. So if they can do it behind closed doors or have to do it here in Europe or whatever, that's so be it. But you feel sorry for players if it doesn't go ahead, because as you know yourselves, it's just a massive thing to be aiming for, and you may only get one chance with the 4-year cycle, and perhaps they might look at it next year. You never know, but it could be a totally different ball game next year as well too, and form is fleeting and injury, etc. So yeah, I was talking about CJ Stander as well during the week, and I think it's a tough time for rugby players, and there are probably guys who don't get the most of sympathy because of professional sport and doing something they love and they're getting paid for it. But it's a short window, and it's not like it's soccer or basketball or American sports in terms of wages. But playing in front of crowds is one of the biggest things of playing sport, and to have that taken away from you, you're putting your body and your health and welfare on the line week in, week out in training as well, and the way you have to push yourself. So to not get that, I suppose, feedback then at the end of the week, and that joy of going out in front of players or in front of fans, and giving it your all, it's tough, and I'd say it's a hard time for them at the moment, and possibly maybe a reason why CJ's kind of chosen to step away at the moment, because it's a tough game at the best of times. But I think you feel sorry for them at the moment.
Yeah, Shanks, we'll come on to you in a minute. We can maybe just have a couple of lines on that. But you mentioned CJ Stander. There was some breaking news, not just in Ireland, but across the world. CJ Stander's a household name. I was very surprised that he's decided to retire. It looks like he's in his prime. But when his shirt got ripped off last year against England, and he had abs bulging out of lats and abs bulging out of his arm, probably similar to himself, Wally. But were you surprised to see CJ Stander retire? If so, why do you think he has?
I think it's probably family reasons. I think some of his family obviously had been heading down to South Africa a bit of time, spending time down there, obviously with the lockdown, etc. Maybe they just want to be closer to parents, etc. So it is a funny time. We're locked away, and as players, you're always in a bubble, but even more so now. And you're getting to 30, you're starting to look down the line, aren't you? Maybe it's a decision made in the current circumstances, but I think you got to put your family first and foremost, and I think their happiness and etc. So I'd say that's partly the cause of his retirement. But certainly I was surprised, because he's ever present and omnipresent for Ireland and Munster, one of the first names on the team sheet, and he always gives it his all. So yeah, big surprise, and especially with the Lions, I think he's retiring in June of all rugby, from all rugby, so we'll probably count him out from that too. I still have a hankering, or sneaking suspicion that he'll be turning out for the Blue Bulls or something in a couple of months, because I think of the experience he'd bring to one of the South African provincial teams if they're coming up here to play in the Pro 14, etc. He'd have a massive experience and knowledge from the game up here, and it would be a real massive benefit to any of us.
Seen it before with players just looking for free PR, aren't they? Saying they retire, then they come back. Martin Williams did it in 2008, retired from international rugby, came back. Jamala has done it as well. Maybe it's a PR campaign. Hope it is, because he's a really good player and there's plenty of life left in him.
I think 30, I think it's too young for him to retire.
I remember Jim's retired 5 or 6 times just to prolong his career.
It's the old "wish me when I'm gone" trick.
Yeah, he's got the old invisible tie on today as well. I like it, Jim. Well done.
It was just, I saw Wally coming. I thought, I can't have it open because my shirt looks lopsided when I'm
I close my eye too. Yeah.
I know, you look great. Wally, so one of the other things off the back of that, people might be quite interested to hear this, it's probably the new age of professionalism, where professional sport, professional rugby mainly, has gone around these project players. CJ Stander being one of them, comes from South Africa, couldn't even speak English/Irish, comes into the Munster team and is obviously played in the Irish team, playing really well. As a true Irishman who's come through the system, you look at some of the talent in Ireland, coming through the Leinster Academy especially. Do you think there's an old school frustration? And if so, is it warranted? And where are your stance on these project players? Do you think Ireland have got enough players to choose? Scotland haven't. We'll pick them from anywhere. But from an Ireland perspective, you've got such good players. A resentment that's still there?
It's a problem in a lot of countries. I think it's probably hurts the Pacific Islanders the most, isn't it? They always get robbed of a lot of their key players to New Zealand, Australia, and places like that. But yeah, I think they have made amends with that rule in some ways, bringing it to 5 years. But I think certainly 3 years is too short a time, and I think it's very much catering for guys who just come in, and because they want to get them an Irish cap, etc. You have Irish players who could lose out. There's been occasions where a project player will get a cap, ahead of an Irish player, but then might never be seen again, and it does do guys out of caps and their chances. So yeah, I think it wasn't ideal, certainly not. But the other side of it is, if kind of as a proud Irishman, you want to be the best team in the world. You want to be obviously get into that team. So you say, well, look, if I want to be the best team in the world, and Irish, I got to beat all the guys who are vying for that position, no matter where they came from. And so the onus is on you as a player to I suppose to get ahead of that guy, regardless of the circumstances, and push yourself and make sure you're beating him, and then hopefully you're in a successful Irish team. But yeah, you do feel for guys, but I don't think players would ever use it as an excuse. I think it's more the media and the public perception is it a bit unfair. But I think as a player, you want to push yourself to beat the challenge.
The one thing I find frustrating is that we all get it. Scotland, Ireland, Wales, us three on here today. Players that come over and they qualify through residency, which is short, like you say, Wally. The frustrating thing for me is they play international rugby, and then when they retire, they go back home. That is, I mean, they're not doing anything wrong. They're playing within the rules, the laws. It's set up there, and they've been great players for your team. But it just doesn't sit well with me when they go home. Then you think, well, we've sort of just been used. They've just used us as a platform to play international rugby, when it's bigger than that, I think. And with the residency rule being increased, I think that's massive as well. But you can see why people do it and teams do it, because it's professional sport now. It's about making money, So if that's the best chance you've got of making a greater income, then of course you're going to do it. So, I don't hate players like that.
Sorry, Shanks, that can happen too with the, even this was a grandfather rule or something like that, where, you do get players coming up and, but they go home straight after.
Grandpa's a bit different though. That's sort of family.
It's still a bit funny, isn't it? It's
Well, I understand, Wally, and that made me qualify to play for Scotland. I once owned a Scotty dog. My mum told me, so that was enough.
Where do you live now, Jim? I can't tell.
I live in Edinburgh, mate. Can you not see the studio background?
I thought it was a prison.
No, this is the edgy look show. I was talking about you. That's a nice plant in the back there. Look, we're going to move on swiftly. Talking of frustrations, we had a question come in from Stephen Byrne. He's really enjoying the host, the chat. Just wondering about Italy. I don't know what the score is at the minute, but it looks like they'll be on their 31st consecutive loss. There's a lot of talk around Italy in this championship, Shanks. Superficially, I've looked at them and thought there's parts of it where they're playing really well, but the talk about this promotion relegation in the Six Nations just doesn't seem to be going away, especially if they're getting absolutely hammered every week. So it'd be good to know what the thoughts of you are with that. 31-10 to Scotland at the moment, so bonus point victory for the Scots as we go to Paris next. Look at the Six Nations.
The Scotland got a bonus point after 28 minutes, all right? So that's not great. Now, if you want to get rid of Italy in the Six Nations, it's going to cost a lot of money, because they're stakeholders, they drive revenue through it commercially for TV rights, and it doesn't become the Six Nations anymore. So if we start looking at other teams, maybe Argentina, South Africa, Fiji, I don't know, it doesn't become the Six Nations. The nostalgic, the history behind that. What we've got in the Northern Hemisphere is such a great product. Everybody wants to be involved in it because of what's gone on in the past. You remove Italy, it's something nice and romantic about going to Rome to watch one of the Six Nations games. They're part of it. They have been for 21 years now. So I don't necessarily think getting rid of them is the right thing. I like them being in it because we're used to it. But somehow, I don't know how we're going to get them to improve, because, you think when they first joined, in 2000, they're probably more competitive than they were now, which is strange, really, because of the money coming in, the development with players as well. So, look, I thought Garbisi and Varney, Triller are really good players, but start the second half, Garbisi puts it out on the full. off the kickoff. You know, you just gift him possession away. He kicked it full against Wales, first kick of the game off the kickoff. So they just don't compete for 80 minutes. And can we help invest more money into getting them better? Because we want them to be competitive, but at the same, I don't want to see them out of the Six Nations because we're used to it. You know, I don't really want to see a Fiji or a South Africa in the Six Nations because I've grown up watching the Five Nations, you know, before it, and it just becomes a different product.
It does. Wally, let's have a look at the Six Nations for Ireland so far as we lead into this England game. We'll talk about the England game after, but how do you look at Ireland so far? There's some of their performance, obviously the game against Wales first up with Peter O'Mahony's red card kind of took the wind out of their sails, really. You know, a tough French team in that second game and then an easy one against Italy. How do you look at it as a whole from an Irish perspective? Under a little bit of pressure, I'd say, with Andy Farrell from the outside looking in.
I think so. I think I expect a bit more from Ireland in terms of just a bit of creativity, etc. You know, we were very much, you know, under a Joe Smith regime for 4 or 5 years. 5 years, I think it was, which was basically just ruck the ball, hold on to it, and just eke your way forward. There was kind of plays off first phase, etc., which were very creative, but the general style, you know, on open play was quite kind of boring and predictable. And I was expecting a little bit more innovation from the coaching team, Mike Cat come in, etc. And it just hasn't really happened. And I think we've gone backwards in terms of the things we were really, really good at under Joe Smith. Like, you know, our discipline was excellent, our ruck was excellent, nailed on. So we were a really hard team to play against because we never really gave those, you know, those little chinks of a stupid penalty or turning over a ball and you know, teams playing off that. So we were kind of, even though we were predictable, we were hard to get the ball back from and kind of frustrated teams a lot. But we have seen to even that first game against Wales, the amount of small little errors we made and the penalties, etc. You know, the penalties that we had never given away in the last 6-7 years. That just taken our eye off that area. You know, the things that, you know, don't require a massive amount of skill that we used to be really good at. We've kind of lost that, and the skill part hasn't come up to scratch. So it's kind of frustrating. I think it was a good win against Scotland. Don't get me wrong, because Scotland have you know, one of the best teams since your day, Jim. But it was a good win. But you know, at the end of the day, they lost at home to France. And obviously away to Wales, and Italy is kind of a given nowadays. You're talking about, so this English game it boils down a lot is resting on both team shoulders for this one, and because if Ireland lose two home games, which they could do, you know, that's going to be a really poor season. And England are a wounded animal, but showing signs of coming back against that good display against France. So if England can play like that again, which you kind of expect them to do, I think, and that could be a problematic day for Ireland.
Yeah, Shanks, you look at this England team. We've spoken about it. Often we love ruggers.
Just ring out, don't we, for a chat?
Yeah,
like rugby.
Yeah. Well, I played with a lot of these England players when I was at Saracens. I don't know how I ended up there, but I did. And we spoke a lot about Owen Farrell, like Maro Itoje, like the Vunipolas, the Jamie Georges, the spine of this England team. Been under a lot of pressure with Eddie Jones at the helm. You look at England's performances, haven't been great, but let's not forget World Cup finalists a couple of years ago against South Africa, won the Six Nations last year, won the Autumn Nations Cup. But I don't know whether it's just the media, us guys in the media, Shanks, that are giving them too much heat. Do you think it's deserved? Do you think the stuff that Eddie Jones throws out there, not picking the form players, making it really hard to get dropped, do you think it's fine for us to be able to talk about this England team like that?
Yeah, I think so. You've got the biggest league, you've got the biggest pool of players to choose from. You know, you've got greater strength and depth than, well, especially Ireland, Scotland, maybe not France. So yeah, look, I think it's rightly so. You know, Eddie Jones has picked his players. He's picked the Saracens players that haven't played any game time really, and that showed. It certainly showed in the first 3 games. I think England certainly looked better against France, and we sort of saw more of a rounded performance from them. So, but they're still a quality team, mate. You know, I still look back in the World Cup, and for me, there was the most entertaining game was England versus the All Blacks. Just the way they put them to bed. It was an incredible game, and I think everyone thought Yeah, the World Cup. You thought they were going to be. You thought that was it. You can't beat this team, but South Africa did it very basically. And I think the England team looked at that and thought, right, that's what we need to do. You know, if we want to become Rugby World Cup winners, then we've got to play like South Africa. But it doesn't really suit them. You know, we've seen a quite pragmatic England, I think, in the Autumn Nations Cup. They just try to outmuscle teams, but I think teams are really fronting up against them physically now, so they have to break teams down elsewhere. They keep changing combinations. Look, stick with Youngs and Farrell for me at 10 and 12. That's by far the best combination,
really?
The most attacking threat. Yeah.
What, Ford and Farrell?
So that's what I meant, Ford and Farrell. Youngs at 9.
You're old school.
I'm not old school. I'm constantly thinking about how to attack teams and how to create space. And with Ford and Farrell at 10 and 12, you get that. So they've got some massive ball carriers. You know, Billy Villapola's getting so much better now. That's partly because he's not played any rugby, and it takes a bit of time, I think, to get back in. But mate, it's a good team. It's a tough team to beat. You know, but discipline has been the issue for them. And your mate Maro Itoje has contributed heavily to that. Why do you think that is, Jim? Why is he getting so many penalties given against him?
Well, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see Maro from.
Well, you should know. You should know. I want you to know.
I know. I coached Maro in the academy, and the funny thing was with Maro Itoje, no word of a lie. You know when someone says, "Oh, I taught them all he knows," and like that happens with the coaches and stuff like that happen when they say, you know, someone from your school or whatever, "Oh, he's there because of me." So when Maro came through, I was playing at Saracens for 3 seasons, and like I said, I played 58 games in 3 seasons, which is quite a lot of rugby at the back end of your career. And now this young lad, Maro Itoje, coming through the academy, and I was coaching the academy. I was like, yeah, you need to watch out for this lad. And there's a lad called Nick Zikwe and Ben Earl and Max Malins. There's a group of these players coming through. And like the other academy coach, I won't say who he was like, oh, I don't know about Maro. He's quite rigid. I was like, I've seen the power when he kind of carries ball and like hands off and like in the collisions, like he's got the frame. Anyway, you fast forward to my first season and you get to the European Cup games that are in around October, November. And Maro had played 2 Prem games, albeit very well. He got a few charge downs and, you know, maybe 4 or 5 turnovers or a match. So we're playing Clermont away in the quarter-final of Europe. After these games, he hasn't played any of them. I played in all of them. And Mark McCall says to me, former Ulster coach, he's now obviously at Saracens still, and he says, "Oh, we're going to pick Maro for the quarter-final against Clermont." I was like, "Mate, what do you mean you're picking Maro? I've got 63 caps for Scotland. I've played every game this season. It's the biggest game of the year." Oh, you know, we've just seen enough, you know, in his power game to go up against Fritz Lee and, you know, some of the big players that they've got in the back row as well. And, you know, we want to have a second row that's a bit more mobile. So I'm raging, right? And because of, like, in me, like, think I'm a bit of a hard man, bit of a, you know, blow bag and stuff like that. I'm like, right, this youngster who I've fucking coached, excuse my language, sorry, who I've coached is having it, right? So I've flown out of the line in training, and it's like we did full contact against Bags. And one of them stories, no word of a lie, I've run out the line, carcass, no muscle mass, and he has flatlined me on the floor and ran over me. And Billy Vanapola and Mako are laughing like hyenas. And then I understood why, not just then, but the game against Clermont, he got man of the match. We actually lost it in the quarterfinal, but he still got man of the match. And after that, Mark McCall was like, "Jim, can you mentor Maro and go through his games?" And no word of a lie, we'd been looking at the laptop. And I was like, this kid is so much better than I ever was.
He's only 15.
Yeah, exactly. He's 18 years old. You know, the thing is with Maro, and like Wally, I don't know what it's like in Ireland in terms of making superstars out of players. Obviously, you've had a few and you've played with a few. And there's a humility around that. I'm not saying that Maro is not humble, but you look at the way that the world is now, the millennials, the social media, the brands that you need to build alongside. The fact that Maro Itoje is now with Rock Nation, who's Jay-Z's company, only him, Cheslin Colby, and Sia Khaleesi are under this umbrella. And all of a sudden you can see what's going on here. You know, you've got the LeBron James style transcending the game of rugby. And there's a lot of flash and dash that goes with that. Like, he's trying to build a brand around it. But I think what's happened to Maro but he's been under a little bit of pressure this Six Nations because there's talk of him being captain. I reckon he's been spoken to about being captain of the Lions tour in the summer. And you've got to remember, he's not captain England. He's captain Saracens a bit. He captained England 20s. And maybe he's listened to a little bit of his hype. And the way that he's played, there's no fans in the stadium. To give away 5 or 6 penalties or whatever it was a couple of matches ago.
It's a bit of a symptom of his style, though, isn't it? Like he's everywhere. Like he's a massive engine, and he's always frustrating the opposition. So there are days you're going to get, a ref might just pick on you, or it just might be one of those days where you just give away, you just that other side of the line where the ref is just catching you. So it's a symptom. I think there's other players who won't give away that many penalties because they won't be around the park as much, or they won't be forcing the game as much. So I think we had it with Alan Quinlan. Like he was brilliant to play with and a nightmare to play against. And he gave away 3-4 penalties a game, but he would do so much damage outside of that he didn't get pinged for it, that you always love playing with him because you kind of fed on the back of it, and teams would be frustrated and just feel under pressure. And so he does. He brings that with him. And kind of, when I was growing up, that's what they said about any good 7, should be getting 2 or 3 penalties at least a game against him. So he plays a little bit like that in the back, as a second in the back row, but also plays
absolutely. What I want to talk about your experiences of playing against England, and how you kind of perceive any England team that comes to Ireland. Obviously, going to Twickenham is very different, but at home in a normal scenario. We're going to go back to that game in 2007, Croke Park, where it went very well for yourself. Just a bit of info. I played for Scotland at Croke Park. Not that we're talking about Scotland in 2010. Last game Ireland ever played there. And believe it or not, Scotland won. I don't know how, but we did. Dan Parks from the touchline is Gilbert. So
that game hurt. Was it Beattie who scored in the corner? He kind of nearly went half the length of the pitch, wasn't it? Oh, that was a sickening, because we had lost our first game in Croke Park as well to France. And that was, obviously it was a big deal getting into a rugby team to play, a foreign sport as they call it here, to play in Croke Park. So it was tough to lose that first one. But as you mentioned there, the second game was that England match. So not only had we the pressure of losing the first match in Croke Park, but also losing to England and the history, which I won't go into now. But it was you talk about transcending sport. Like that game in Ireland transcended the sport, because it was a historical game, and there was so much in the media, and you couldn't move or turn on any radio station or TV station in Ireland without it being the topic, and for various different reasons. So you felt like you were really in a pressure cooker, because there was so much. If you were to go out and lose to England in that game, it just didn't bear thinking about it. You had, you always have, I suppose, the hopes of the nation riding on your shoulders, but it was by a multiple of 3 or 4. And the build up in that week was special. But I just remember the bus journey to that one bus journey, and they're always kind of special time. You're nervous, but it is a special time you look back on, because you get that bit of peace and quiet on the bus, and you listen to a bit of music and you take in the surroundings. But just the public and the support the whole way to Croke Park was amazing, and kind of the hairs are sticking on the back of your neck the whole way from leaving the hotel. But I do remember the anthems, and that's one of the big things from that game was just the God Save the Queen was played, and I was like, wow, that was incredible. It was amazing. But we blew it out of the park with Aaron Dean and that, but and Hayes and Flannery crying, the big Wendy's. But Paddy Wallace was next to me, and when God Save the Queen came on, he was like, you don't mind if I sing this while I do it? So he just totally dissipated all my stress. It gave me a good old chuckle. But yeah, that was a brilliant game, and I think Isaac Boss was the last guy to score for us in that game, and just that was a cherry on the cake. We were going to win that game. Just what a relief in some ways, but it was a really fun memory, I think.
Wally, I remember playing you in 2008 at Croke Park. The first time I've been there, and it's really weird, isn't it? Like the bus journey, and you're going through a housing estate, and you're thinking, where are we going? And then obviously this massive stadium opens, and honestly, I reckon it's the greatest stadium. Like, how it looks, how it feels. It's incredible. It's all symmetrical all the way. It's huge. You get nearly 90,000 in. We played in 08, didn't we? And a couple of things from that game. One was we picked and go for 3 minutes, like about 3 minutes at the end to seal the victory. The second was Adam Jones, the prop. He had his hair beaded. I don't know if you remember. It was like all beads. Like we call him Alicia Jones because he was like Alicia Keys. It was beaded all. It was horrific. And also, like I remember, like towards the end of the game, I was on the floor with Brian O'Driscoll, and obviously like smashed him backwards like 10 yards or something. And I said, "Do you fancy swapping shirts at the end of the game?" He went, "Yeah, fine." And that was it. But he went off just before the end of the game, like with probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes to go. And I thought nothing of it. You know, fine, we won't swap shirts. I think he wanted mine more than I wanted his.
Of course.
But we went, in Dublin, what hotel are the after-match functions at?
It could have been, it was at the Berkeley Court. No,
yeah.
Sorry. It's probably, or else it was there at the Shelburne.
Shelburne, that was it. And I went to the toilet, and all of a sudden I'm washing my hands and singing happy birthday, and Paul O'Connell comes in with a carrier bag, and he just, there wasn't like how you doing or anything like that. He just went, "Brian wanted you to have this." And that was it. I took it. It was a bag for life, which I've still got. But inside it was Drico's jersey. I was like, "Oh, fair play." You know, to think like that, injured, to put his jersey in a bag, give it to Paul O'Connell, to give to me at a black tie function after. And I put it under the table, kept on celebrating, and just left it there. Forgot about it.
Oh no!
Yeah, I'm gutted. I woke up in the morning and we were staying somewhere on the coast, and I was like, "Oh no, what have I done?" So rang the hotel. They kept it. They dropped it back where we were staying, and I sold it a couple of years later. So
win-win.
Smart.
I donated it, all right.
You might get a free stay in the Shelburne now as well on the back of that.
Yeah.
They looked after you. So
right. Yeah. I also like British Airways and Emirates Airways.
It's the gift that keeps on giving, Shanks.
Yeah. What a legend. Wally, we've only got about 10 or so minutes left. I want to talk about legends, right? So we've got a question from Niall Phelan about Andy Farrell, whether he would be under pressure in his role as Ireland coach if they lose today. And off the back of that, him bringing in someone like Paul O'Connell, stroke of genius, whether or not that was Andy Farrell, whether that came from the top. Just some of your memories and experiences with, you know, with playing with Paul, you know, and him coaching now. I mean, I always found, he's one of the best who've ever done it. You talk about GOATs, the greatest of all times. He's one of the best. But the warm person that he is, I just love the bloke. So just a little bit about Andy Farrell. Is he under pressure today? And then maybe we'll talk a little bit about Paulie and what he has already brought to this Irish squad, but what he'll bring to the team today in this game against England.
Yeah, look, I think Andy probably is a little bit. Like it's still relatively early days, you know, with COVID, etc., and the disjointed seasons that we've been having. But you know, maybe not having as much time with the players, etc., and been hampered in what they can do. But there probably is a bit of pressure on him. And yeah, I think look, there always is on coaches when things are going well. But I think this game, I don't think they're going to be making any decisions. I think they're going to give him another year, etc., to bed in, and so I don't think he's in danger of losing his position or anything like that. But I do think, yeah, there will be pressure mounting on the back of this because, as Shane said, it's a short competition, so everyone is kind of waiting to see at the end where we finish up and what other games go against you or for you. So if we lose to England and we finish down near the bottom, then. Yeah, look, you're not. The performances or the results aren't coming in. Maybe the performances are another factor in that, and things could be a lot better in that regard. So, look, bringing in the likes of Paul has been massive. We saw against Scotland, but I think, yeah, look, I don't think it'd be. Yeah, cut a long story short, I don't think he'd be under pressure for his role yet, but there will be media attention on him.
Yeah, and what about Paulie? Obviously, coming into the squad, you look at the lineouts, and this has been the big thing, as Scotland know. took them to cleaners. Actually spoke to Paulie. Weirdly, he rang me last week. He was trying to get an insight to the Scotland line-out, because at that time that I was screaming at the front of the line-out. But what's Paul O'Connell like as a bloke? We talk about Brian O'Driscoll, Ronan O'Gara, some of the greats to have played the game. But one of the things that I love is there's an old school element to these guys, like they'll have a beer with you after the game. The game's very different now. It's uber professional, social media orientated. The engagement obviously isn't there at the minute because there's no fans, but it just feels that way. No after match functions. But with someone like Paulie's like cut from an old school cloth, but with the professionalism and the modern and the innovation to be able to take the game forward for Ireland. Yeah,
definitely. Look, we had our All Ireland League back in the late 80s, probably early 90s. It was massive here, and the clubs, young Munsters, Gary Owen around Limerick, and all the clubs in Dublin would have played for that league. And Paulie would give nothing more than to go back and play in that. He's really old school. He'd probably give up everything he's achieved just to go back and play in that young Munsters team with the Claws and all those kind of guys who would have been kind of featuring. And but actually, Gerald's Keith's dad would have been there as well too, playing number 7. But yeah, he is proper old school. He's a love of the game and he's a love of the sport. But as you mentioned, he's kind of 3 different characters, isn't he? He's kind of on the field. He's he's got him psych, and he's just you don't want to be on the wrong side of him. And even in training, etc., it comes to lineouts, you need to be on point. But then you step out of that, you go into, you go for a jar, and he's the biggest kid of everyone. And he seems to be able to manage that kind of being, really able to relax and be really friendly to everyone, but just command that respect when it mattered and when it came to training and coaching and doing his homework. Like incredible brain on him as well, and memory. And in that time he learned Afrikaans and dismantled the South African lineout. What he won't tell you is he learned Afrikaans by watching Sesame Street, the South African Sesame Street, and watching the count. So but yeah, he's. I'll tell you actually a story. There was he wouldn't have known her well, but my brother Henry was down on one of the line steers in 09, and his wife Sylvie was there, and Paul met her maybe once on that tour, and it was just nice and pleasant, whatever. But I'd say I'd retired, so it's probably 3 or 4 years later at least. And Paul was training up in Carton House, and I mentioned to him that that Ben was going. My nephew Ben was going along, so maybe say hello. And he was straight over, knew Sylvia's name, straight away. He just has a warm ability to anyone coming into a squad, young fellas. He'll always know something about them, and he'll be welcoming in and be asking questions of family and club and this game or that game. And just a great brain, but a great captain, great leader, and one guy you'd always go to battle with.
Yeah, the guy's an absolute legend. Shanks, because we've only got about 6 or 7 minutes left, let's give Wales a couple of lines as they go into their game against France. We joked about it, and it almost seemed like a little bit of a joke. They play France tonight for the Grand Slam decider. Can they do it? If so, how? How do you beat this French team who, bar their Wafflegate scenario in Italy, where they contracted COVID off the back of that, they've looked pretty good.
Yeah, defensively they have to be good, especially sort of scramble defence, because this French team will make breaks, and it's how Wales deal with that. Discipline will be key, as it has been all the way through, and you've got to take your chances, which Wales have done, which has been really good. Just look at the teams, 2 quality teams. You don't want to be kicking loosely to our back 3 either. A lot of people who say no, we can't kick to this French team, they'll run the ball back, they'll be devastating. But look, I think we're just as good in that back 3. I think they'll have a plan. Last week against England, I think all lineouts were off the top. They didn't catch and drive at all. They try to take that away from England. I think we'll see a lot more of that from France. So it's how Wales deal with that physically. But I think if we can match them physically, we got a shot. That's for sure. The tough thing will be being a 9 o'clock kickoff in France, 8 p.m. our time. Like what? It's so hard, isn't it, boys? To keep your mind unoccupied, really, not to think about the game, to think about something else for such a long period, because you can overplay the game in your head. It can get quite stressful. I remember in when was it? 2007. A few of us were sponsored by Adidas, so we'd get like a budget to go down to the Adidas shop on the Champs-Elysees. So game day arrived. We thought we'd go down on game day, kill a bit of time, and we knew we had like a meeting at 4 o'clock with the coaches. So we went down like at 2, got all the kit. Like you're given a budget, you try and stick to it as best you can, but you know you're not that bothered about it. James Hook went exactly onto the budget, which might have been like, I don't know, €2,000. He's late for the meeting. He's walking up the Champs-Elysees carrying like 4 tennis rackets, kicking a football because he wanted to get every single bit of his budget, and he missed the team meeting because he was so adamant. He walks in and he's got like 3 caps on over the top, like you see cricketers. He's got 4 tennis rackets. He's got a football. He's got a volleyball. He's got 2 massive bags. But it is tough, like, isn't it? You know, like what you do all day. It's so hard to try and switch off, you know, so you're mentally ready for the game. So they're gonna have to do something. Go to bed, bit of club duvet, watch a movie. But look, confidence is with them. They scored 17 tries, more than any other team so far. Less handling errors than any team so far. Scrum's been good. Lineout's improving.
Right, on Wales. Right, that's enough on Wales. Also, you need to put your position in front of the tree because we're losing you in the back with the colour of the wood at the back. You're almost disappearing, like you're becoming invisible. But Dave, I'm going to come to you, mate.
Mahogany.
Oh, is it mahogany? Is it cedar wood? That's what they do down in Wales. Wally,
between one fern.
Yeah. This England team, physical team. We've spoken about Ireland under pressure. How do you see the game going this afternoon? If Ireland beat England, I don't know what there was an in-house thing with the guys at SO.BEER, like a triple spoon. Like they've lost to Scotland, they've lost to Wales, and if they lose to Ireland, that's, you know, the anti-triple crown, as it were.
Yeah, it'd be a big shock. Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, how do I see it going? Look, I think you always got to back Ireland playing at home, and these 2 teams, I suppose, on form, you know, they're probably fairly level, I would say. You know, England have probably gone backwards a lot more than Ireland, even though Ireland have gone backwards. But I don't know. I worry that French game has given them a bit more confidence, England, and you know, if they get off to a good start, it could be a rough day. But we've a lot of changes as well in the Irish team, and a few key players. Will Connors was playing really, really well for us. I was a guy who kind of had come in from the cold a little bit and had just really impressed. Ty Byrne had a massive game at 6 and they put him back to second row now. So obviously James Ryan is gone, and he's been excellent for us as well too. Stealing those lineouts and was massive for us against Scotland. But so I think we're probably a little bit light in the back row, I feel, this week. And possibly maybe even the second row is not as strong as last week either. So they'll have their work cut out for them up front. And if England can dominate there, that it could be a rough day. But look, the likes of Bundy Aki, great guy to be able to bring back into the fold. Gives you good go forward ball.
Gary Ringrose been missed massively though, Wally. Gary Ringrose, like the half break he makes defensively, the reads, you know, just those little half breaks that get them on the front foot. I think he's been incredible at Six Nations. Yeah,
he's good. He's good, and he probably hasn't got the freedom as you know to show off all his skills, but he certainly can. But yeah, look. So I don't know. I think it is going to be a tough game. I do think Ireland might just inch it though. And look, if they do, it puts a very different complexion onto our Six Nations. But 2 teams under pressure, it's going to be tough.
So give me a quick prediction. Got a minute to go, Wally. Just one line. Who's going to win the game?
I'll go with Ireland. I would say 21-17.
Oh, lovely. Shanks, who are you going with?
I'm going England. Same reasons.
Your English counterpart on here.
Well, I've lived in England for a little bit. That's probably the only reason why. But I'm going England. I think it'd be a high-scoring game. I think it'd be 32-27 to England.
Okay, I think it will be tight. I'm going to go England 18, Ireland 16. Right, Wally, last question. Shanks, one last question. You've got to give me one answer. British and Irish Lions captain if it goes ahead this summer. Wally, who are you going for? Who would you follow?
Who do I follow? I told you. Yeah.
Oh, lovely. Controversial in some part of the world. Shanks, quickly before we go.
Alan Wynne-Jones.
Me too, Alan Wynne-Jones. Ladies and gentlemen, an hour has flown by. Absolutely loved it. Big thanks to David Wallace, obviously Tom Shanklin as well, the legend, but also to SO.BEER, a beer with benefits. And it's a lovely drop. That lovely that mine has actually gone. So I think we've had some really good insight into the games of the weekend. Scotland are still beating Italy. It's a close game, 45 points to 10. As we know, Wales, big game against France tonight. But the game of the weekend that we've just spoken about and had the pleasure of sitting here and chatting with Wally about what it's like to play against England is England versus Ireland or Ireland versus England kickoff in a while. So thanks for having us. Cheers to that.
Cheers, guys.